Russia is asking for a ceasefire along the entire front line on October 17th in order to begin repairs on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which Russia itself has brought to a critical condition. And the Russians are making this call precisely on the day when Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are having a phone conversation. And here you can immediately see the blatant manipulation by the Russians. Representatives of the Russian occupiers have already publicly stated that they need a ceasefire precisely on the day when Volodymyr Zelensky will be meeting with Donald Trump. And here, the Russians have come up with a very strong manipulation. The thing is, Trump recently stated that Ukraine is planning to launch a large-scale offensive, and he is ready to support such an offensive. And it is at this moment that Russia is asking for a truce, trying to make it look like Ukraine is the one that wants war. Although the start of repair work is being delayed only by Russian shelling. I'm sure you've heard that some units at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant lost power a couple of weeks ago. So will there be a ceasefire tomorrow or not? Let's talk about that. Later in this episode, we'll talk about what the Russians are planning, why they are making these statements about a ceasefire, and how they are trying to manipulate this topic. My name is Pechiy. Today is October 16th. And before we start this episode, I want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and write any detailed comment under this episode. This really helps promote the video on YouTube, and if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel financially, you can do so with any donation by using the links and payment details in the description of this video. It clearly says there, support the channel Pechiy. Choose any format that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you provide. Also, I invite you to subscribe to my Telegram channel Pechiy News. The link is in this video's description. So, Russia has requested a ceasefire in order to repair the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Sky News is covering this today. And many, unfortunately, both Ukrainian and Russian journalists picked up this news and started writing that Sky News was supposedly sharing its own insider information. A ceasefire is reportedly set for October 17, with Ukraine and Russia said to have agreed. I always say you need to read a little further than the headline and the first paragraph, because there's more to it. Sky News explains that, according to the head of Rosatom, Alexei Likachov, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, has taken on certain mediating functions. He added that, besides Rosatom, the Russian Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Defense are also involved in the negotiations. And it was Likachev, not Sky News, but specifically Likachev, who made the following statement, quote, "We're talking about establishing a period of silence that should be long enough to carry out work on the Dnipro line, which has been destroyed, as he puts it, on the territory of the Russian Federation, meaning the occupied Ukrainian territory, as well as on the Yaroslavska line, which is under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces." He emphasized that this is an extremely difficult decision and added that it requires reciprocity. He means if the unwashed Russians stop firing, the Ukrainian armed forces should do the same. And beforehand, the decision to suspend hostilities will be implemented tomorrow, October 17-ish. That's according to Likachev, I emphasize. According to the same Likachev, the amount of work is quite large, so network specialists will need about 6-7 days. So the Russians are counting on at least a week-long truce. Remember this moment, it's very important and coincides with other significant events for Ukraine. And the Russian official also commented on Grossi's contribution to the diplomatic resolution of the issue regarding the repair of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant seized by the Russians. Quote, "It is necessary to emphasize the great work that Grossi is doing diplomatically. But on our side, the decision will be made in an interdepartmental format and primarily by the leadership of the Ministry of Defense." It's notable that Ukrainian authorities haven't commented publicly on this yet. Nevertheless, insiders claim that the start of repairs at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is being delayed only by Russia, since it is striking both the power lines and the repair crews. These savages, they strike at everything they see. They say that Ukraine has repeatedly signaled its readiness to start repair work, and previously there were never any particular problems with repairs. Now it has become impossible to carry them out because of the Russian shelling. And here I'll add that the day before, the International Atomic Energy Agency proposed to restore and resume the power supply to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is occupied by the Russians, in 2 stages. As part of the first stage, the International Atomic Energy Agency wants to create a ceasefire zone with a radius of 1.5 kilometers. This is necessary to carry out repairs on the Dniprovska line with a voltage of 750 kilowatts, which was damaged in the territory controlled by the unwashed Russian occupiers. The second stage involves creating another ceasefire zone to repair the backup line Ferosplavnaya 1 with a voltage of 330 kilowatts in the territory controlled by the armed forces of Ukraine. And now comes the most important and the most interesting part. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency plan, its representatives were supposed to be present during the repair work, which was scheduled to take place from October 11 to 17. That means the repair should have been finished by tomorrow. That's it. A ceasefire was already agreed to allow repairs and complete the work. As officially stated by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the Ukrainian side provided security guarantees for the repair crews from October 11 to 17, but Russia did not provide such guarantees and continued the shelling. Let me remind you, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has been disconnected from the Ukrainian power grid for a long time. The Russians did this intentionally. Right now, the plant is operating on diesel generators, which is an emergency mode of operation. And this has been going on for more than 2 weeks now. But the Russians are crudely manipulating the topic of nuclear safety, and they haven't been stalling all this time for nothing. Once again, the Russians have requested a ceasefire for tomorrow, October 17th. The International Atomic Energy Agency says that a ceasefire around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant had already been agreed upon for the period from the 11th to the... Ukraine has provided security guarantees to all repair workers. But what happened a little earlier, just a bit earlier, United States President Donald Trump said on Wednesday, October 15, that Ukraine wants to go on the offensive and he will have to make a difficult decision. And when is Trump going to make this decision about supporting the Ukrainian offensive? That's right. Tomorrow, October 17, when his meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is scheduled, where they are also expected to discuss long-range missiles, Tomahawk, and the armed forces of Ukraine's new offensive. Trump himself said it, quote, in addition, Zelensky and Trump stated that they will discuss Tomahawk cruise missiles and air defense systems at the Friday meeting in the White House. And here is a super important update for you. The Ukrainian delegation in the United States has already met this week with the company Raytheon, which produces Tomahawk missiles and Patriot air defense systems. There's a good chance the decision is made and only technical details are being discussed now. Trump himself previously stated that he believes Ukraine can regain the territories occupied by the Russians, but this cannot be done without an offensive. It all comes down to the offensive. And against this backdrop, the Russians are putting on a real show. The Kremlin deliberately and intentionally switched the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to generators and simply waited for the moment when the situation would become critical and a ceasefire would be needed. And now the Kremlin will be shouting at the top of their lungs that they supposedly want a ceasefire while Ukraine is preparing to advance. Who doesn't want to end the war? They've brought it to a critical point. Yes, they themselves can bring the situation to the point where the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant ends up in an accident. But they weren't just stalling for no reason, they were stalling precisely until this moment of negotiations. And now, you see, those who don't really dig deep into news analysis will say, listen, the Russians are asking for a truce, and Zelensky in Washington says, we want to go on the offensive. So, who actually wants war? That's the manipulation. I'll repeat once again, the truce for the repair of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was supposed to take place from October 11 to 17. The Russians deliberately refused to act and now manipulatively say, we want it on the 17th. I'll stop here for now. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all. Take care. Goodbye.